Once your repair is finished, you'll need to weave in the ends at the back of your work. I've got my needle and thread ready to go, and I'm just going to show you a few different options that I use, and this will vary depending on the type of the knit, how fine the knit is, things like that. The first option is to just mimic the original knit structure on the back here. So you can see these loops. I've got a loop underneath here, and I'm going to follow that around and then insert my needle in the loop above it and the loop above that, going off to an angle. So when I pull that through, I've traced the shape of that loop and my needle and thread are now in position here, ready to trace this loop. What we're essentially doing here is duplicate stitch of garter stitch, but I'm just showing you that here in reference to weaving in the ends. Again, we're going in at an angle here and this time tracing those loops rather than the V's. You're always picking up 2 stitches at a time, and you can just do that a couple of times. I've worked away from the area that I've darned on the front here to reduce bulk on the finished piece. And then when you're happy with that, trim off the excess thread. That's this technique from the back, and then you can't really see it from the front. One thing I will say, if you're using a different colour with a visible repair like this one, is that if the knit stretches out on the front, you may just be able to see those threads that I've woven in there, but from a distance you can't really see anything. Another option, which is probably my most commonly used option, is to move across one loop from where your needle and thread is, go up through a loop, skip the next loop, pick up the next loop. So I've gone loop, skip a loop, loop, and then what we'll do is work back in the opposite direction. So this time we'll skip the loops that we picked up and left. 3 tends to be the amount of loops that I would normally pull through. And one more time, so I'm just going to go back in the opposite direction, picking up a loop, skipping a loop, picking up a loop, skipping a loop, and then pulling all of that through. And then again, you can just trim off the excess thread. Again, with this one on the right side, if you stretch the knit out, you may just about be able to see these threads if you've used a contrasting colour. But if you have done a repair that's in the same colour, then you're not going to notice it when it's finished. So these are the 2 options that I would normally use. If you do have 2 pieces of thread that are left together like these 2, you can always knot them, but I have talked about a lot why I tend not to knot the work that I've done on knitwear. If I show you that here, if I were going to tie a knot, I would leave this amount of slack here and then tie a double knot and trim those ends off. The reason for this slack here is that knitwear is stretchy and it moves around with you. So if you have a knot right against the fabric, it's going to cause tension as you wear it. So I would only really recommend doing this if it's a very loose garment that you aren't bothered about having this loop of thread on the inside where it might irritate your skin.